mean, we should have had an attempt to look for every existing drug to see what would happen if we applied it in a safe way. But this was absolutely forbidden.
მოგესალმებით მეგობრებო, ჩვენ ვაგრძელებთ ჩვენ გადაცემებს ჯონათან გალიბლის შესახებ. მოგეხსენებათ, რომ უკვე რამდენი გადაცემა ჩავწერეთ თავების მიხედვით, ჯონათან გალიბლის წიგნის მიხედვით. ამჯერად დღეს სტუმარი გვყავს ჯორჯიიდან, ხვდებით ალბათ რომელი ჯორჯიიდან, ქრის ლინგლი, რომელიც თავის შესახებ თვითონ გვეტყვის, საუბრის წარმოთქმაში მოგვეხმარება ჩვენი მეგობარი გია ჯანდიერი. Please, Chris.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back here in the other Georgia. From my childhood, I was always interested in Georgia. So, in 1982, in 1982, I came to visit here in Tbilisi from Moscow, where I was a guest. Visiting the Luxembourg embassy in Moscow at that time. So I've been coming to Georgia since 1982, and then probably since in the 2000s I've come almost every year, almost once a year every year, except for the pandemic period. So I feel much at home here. My intellectual and spiritual home is in Guatemala at the Universidad Francisco Marroquin, which is probably unique in the world in being a university dedicated to classical liberal values. And they educate the students in free market principles based upon the work of the great Austrian economic school giants, Mises and Hayek. So this is my background. I have no home base. I travel I've been here for 2 weeks, so I don't travel continuously, but
you have been many different countries.
I've only been to 100 countries so far.
100?
100. So there's at least 100 more, so there's much more work to be done. So,
but you came from a tour in Europe.
Yes, I was with the Free Market Roadshow in Europe, in Greece, Macedonia, North Macedonia, Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia. So, yeah, I usually have been doing that every year for the last 5 years. But again, it was interrupted by the pandemic policies. But so here I am. I came back and I was invited to participate in a conference on the free market solutions to environmental problems at the University of Georgia. Actually, I have a PhD from the University of Georgia, but in Athens, Georgia, not the one here. So the new economic school of Georgia with Pata and Gia hosted and organized this conference. So very happy to come back.
It's nice to meet you here.
And we are always happy to host you in Georgia because you are kind of Georgian.
Yeah.
So, but what is very good with our Georgia is that we have a long history, but long experience also, especially with things like we had once upon a time a very strong free market. Mm-hmm. Then we experienced the communism and socialism, and now we are back to capitalism, and we are kind of leaders anywhere, and we get, because Georgians are always entrepreneurial and they are always looking for easier and comfortable life, and that moves them to think about how to improve their life and how to make innovation, etc., etc. So we were too smart for Soviet Union.
Yeah, there was I know when I was in Moscow in the early 1980s, that Georgians were famous for among the Soviets, for their entrepreneurial talents and for their entrepreneurial energies. So I learned that. That was a surprise to me. I did not know that before. So that was really an interesting aspect of my learning experience in coming here the first time.
Very important for that period was that Georgians or most of the Russians or most of the Soviets did not have any access to the books like this one or any market economy books, not simply like free market was completely prohibited, but
I have not heard about Mises or Hayek, even Keynes or like this. I have not heard about that at all.
I can imagine.
And we could have some understanding of entrepreneurship from the same Karl Marx Capital book, which was critical about it, but you could still understand that there was something different, that he was not easy to, I believe he was not easy to destroy those arguments of the entrepreneurship. But for us, that was only source of information to understand what was out of the iron curtain and far away from us, let's say.
In some ways, though, books are incidental to the way that we live. Georgians didn't have to read Adam Smith to be entrepreneurial. It's part of the...
I think no one needs to.
Exactly. I mean, it's part of the human trait that you're seeking to improve your own condition and the condition of your family.
I think the problem is opposite. Modern society, modern social system presses on the people not to use the instinct they have naturally.
Yeah.
So it's bad somehow. Why is it bad to do something for your happiness? Why is it bad? Can you understand?
Yeah.
Why is it bad to do for something for someone, to get something from him?
Yeah.
Why is it bad?
Yeah.
I cannot understand. It's hard. It's not hard, but it's hard to understand for many people.
I think what happens is that if we think of our family life is a communist system.
Yeah.
And it's centrally planned. The thing is, when you go outside of the immediate family, maybe you're a social democrat. That is, you might be friendly or helpful to your cousins or uncles. But in private life outside of that, we should all be capitalists. That is, we should understand that nobody's there to help us, that we have to find our own way, and we find our own way by interacting in a voluntary way with other people for them to reward us.
Yeah.
So I think
in private life sometimes it's better to be like this.
Yeah. But in fact, most families are at least
different cases.
because of the nature of family. You take care of the children.
For example, if we remember Atlas Shrugged, you have read that, sure. So when Riordan tries to help his brother in time, he becomes worse and worse.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. At some point,
sometimes it's not correct.
You see that communism always fails. It has to be either you have to escape from communism.
Yes.
Yeah, but there is also one...
But I think that's the reason people believe that communism is not so bad, because they've experienced it without realizing it.
People does not understand.
Yeah.
So Adam Smith was not the economist, he was the moral philosopher. There was no such a profession at the time as an economist. 100 years gone, and then there were appearing some people named that they were economists. But but when he was describing these stories of the market economy, he was trying to explain that there is nothing immoral here in the market economy. That is the normal thing with the humans when they do the type of things. But that was very strongly missing in the Soviet environment, that if somebody was making money in the Soviet Union, there was a kind of hatred to those guys, that, oh, they make money, they are...
well, they were made criminals, so
yeah,
criminals are usually looked at as...
If you were forced to pay, for instance, for some services, additional money, then they were calling this bribe. But in fact, this was the continuation of the price system, that there was a deficit of that thing and you needed to pay more because there was a deficit, nothing else.
Yeah.
If there was no deficit, you would not be pushed to pay anything.
Yeah.
But Soviet Union was a country of deficit.
Shortages, yeah.
Shortages,
Yeah.
for everything you needed for your life, for everything. Just the people, current generation of young people cannot even believe there was such a shortage of everything, and you cannot also make.
Not only believe, but they cannot understand how could you be shortage of something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because there was plenty of that in real life, but there was a shortage here in Soviet
And
Union.
this is why it may come back, because they didn't learn the lessons we learned. They don't understand the difficulties.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Knowing something, it helps you not to give it possibility to come back. But when you forgetting, when society forgetting the problem with it, possibility of coming back the same situation is quite high.
See, the younger generation have things without having to sacrifice or having to do without. When I grew up, I was from a very well-off family, but we had to wait to get things. I mean, it was the 1950s, so the world hadn't recovered from World War II. That's part of it, but it just things weren't easy to have, like something as simple as a Coca-Cola. I'm from Atlanta, the home of Coca-Cola. I couldn't have a Coca-Cola a week, and if I did, that was really something special. And now, young people, they walk to a Spar on any corner and they have all they want, and they have money in their pocket to buy it. They never did without. They never saw what it was like to, to wait for things. It's just all there. So, well, with so much wealth around, we can spread it around. We can take it away. We can give it away. They really don't understand how wealth is created. What is behind that Spar being on the corner? Someone has to pay the rent. Someone has to pay the employees, buy the materials, maintain the inventories and all that. It's all, it's just there to them. So I worry about the...
And bring those goods to the shop, which they are not sure that there will be consumption and there will be demand for that. They are just trying. Without trying, then there will be no business.
And this is why this Jonathan Gullible is such an important book.
Step by step we begin how to reach to this.
And this is really a good entry point for especially younger people, but I think it's accessible for people of all ages. And I think, I've been to many places in the world, and I'm surprised at how many people first began to understand the benefits of a free society from reading this book. So it's had an enormous impact. It's available in, I don't know how many languages now, 40 or 50 languages, maybe more. So I've met... Yeah. So it's available, it's a very accessible book, and it gives provides a basic economic understanding of the realities of the world. And this, to me, it's really one of the great books in that regard. It's a very simple book. It's cartoon-like in many ways. I think...
Great book with its simplicity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of professional economists don't know about it, and if they did, they might not see the value in it, and I might not, had I not traveled so much and met so many people who said, this is what changed my life. So it's
you said one important thing here. I think that it's about economics, and many people can think that economics is something very difficult, something very high level, which they cannot reach because they think this is about formulas and huge tables and such kind of things. It's not about that life. Because
human action. It's about
human action. This is about their own life, what they feel every day, what they do every day, and how it is done. For instance, when you were saying about the Spar shop, then I thought one of the best things which I read about this is iPencil, very short text which is explaining how a pencil you want to buy in a shop, which can be very cheap thing like 10 American cents, for instance, can involve thousands of people that you get the pencil. That you never thought about how many people are involved, how it is organized. There are so many different types of professions involved in this, and you just get it in the shop and you don't understand what is behind. And I was always saying that let's think about the aircrafts also. This is pencil, very simple thing that there are 4 or 5 ingredients, that's all. But with an airplane, which can be maybe 20,000 different details, who is thinking about that? Who is organizing this? And this is very important thing which is missing in the politics, what I understand. In the politics, like this book is about economic life, but in reality about the mistakes of the politics. Exactly, it's a mistake of politics that people think that they can solve the problems of economic life with their politics and with their government intervention, and as much as intervention as the problems are disappearing, which is absolutely vice versa to the real life. But what they don't understand, this is what is the reality behind of the entrepreneurship. How the very simple thing like a pencil comes to your table. To your shop, to the shop, you go and see that, oh, this is only 50 tetri, and how can it be that 10,000 people are involved in the in the business to bring you one pencil? You know what they get from one pencil, each person who was involved. You know why they are doing this, and these kind of questions. These are maybe not only for older people like my generation, but it's people from the age of 4 years, 3 years. They need to start understanding that this is not coming from the heaven. This is coming from the real life, and the real people are doing this.
But you raised a good point that the idea that really resonates in this book, that is brought out in this book, is the nature of the problems of political governance. That I think one of the things that I try to teach my students, and I think is evident in this book, is that you should see governments as the source of most of the persistent problems, the widespread problems that exist over a long period of time that affect a large number of people. They can be traced to a government policy. So governments are often the source of the problem, and therefore cannot be the cure.
But source.
So this is an instinct I always have. Many people naturally think the government should solve this, and I say no. The government cannot solve it because the government actually caused it. That is the public policy choices that were made perhaps in years past, more recently.
So at this time, should remember Reagan's words, I came to help you to solve your problems.
Yeah. Now, you can't know my problem, and so therefore you can't really understand the nature of my problem. So this is it's a real good point that's made in this book in each chapter, I think. And this book in many ways echoes the work of Bastiat, the famous French, he's a politician, an essayist, and I think really one of the great...
A chapter here.
So he's a great communicator of these basic ideas, and I think what Ken Scullin did here was to simplify, Bastiat simplified human interactions with government generally, and human interactions with one another, and Ken Scullin simplified Bastiat in this book.
May I say a few words? Bastiat was translated into Georgia in 19th century by Ilya Chavchavadze.
So there are some great thinkers nowadays also, like Thomas Sowell. He was also asking, he is asking always some important, crazy questions, crazy important questions. Maybe that I have never understood why it is greed to want to keep the money you have earned, but not greed to want to take somebody else's money.
Yeah.
which is describing many different things in our life. That
more interesting phrase for him, for Saul, is when he says, my philosophy is to save what I earn, and you save what you earn.
Yeah.
But if your philosophy is to take my money, then say me how much and why.
Yeah.
Why should I give you?
Yeah. What's the moral basis? And that's the thing. Taxation is really, many people presume that governments are entitled to the first claim over your income. Well, I mean, how did we ever get to that point? Your family should have a higher claim to your income than the state, the government. Or you should certainly. But what we've...
Here I understand like this. We agree that government take from us some amount for our safety.
Yeah.
If the mind is about safety, it's okay. But if the mind is that government takes from me and gives to someone, I'm not happy because of
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
It was never meant to be about redistribution. States were seen as an instrument to provide goods for us that we couldn't provide through the market for each other. And therefore, taxes were validated on that basis. But there's very few things. But what's happened over time is that taxes have become a method of redistribution, to take from one person to give to others. And this is, in my view, I mean, the moral basis is, there's no moral basis.
I think redistribution was begun from 19th century only.
It really began with...
Step by step.
It began with Bismarck. Bismarck wanted to create a Prussian sort of, consolidate the Germans around a Prussian sort of state. And he created a welfare state. So the welfare state has a very troubled background, because look what happened with the German state. We had World War I, we had World War II. We might not have had that in absence of this welfare state concept.
Well, when I have read one article of Ilya Chavchavadze I mentioned, he in 1888 years, 88, I don't remember exactly that, he wrote that the politics Bismarck does, it's not friend policy. This makes war after some while.
Yeah.
About 20 years ahead, he already understands that this policy will bring Germany to the war.
Yeah. So the welfare state is really corrupt and immoral, and people believe that it's a pristine moral concept, and it's not at all. It has a bad history, and I think if we investigate it, there's no reason. Before the welfare state, private charity was not perfect. Some people might have been left out, but for the most part, we didn't need a welfare state 200 years ago. The family took care, or the community took care, or the church, or the mosque, or the synagogue. We took care of each other. We didn't have the state to tax one group to give to another group. The problem is, when the state's involved, it's a 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. operation. But when it's private charity, it's 24 hours. Private charity is open 24/7 because it's a human interaction. It's not a job. I engage with someone to help them because I care about them. I don't do it because it's my job. And I don't go home at 5 o'clock and say, don't call me.
Yeah, it's very clear, because if he makes mistake, he will lose his own money. So.
Exactly. And if,
okay,
yeah.
I would like to ask you about one more question. How did you meet this book, and if you know author of this book, Ken Scullin?
Well, I was in Hawaii many years ago, and one of my colleagues who I had taught with in Europe was Ken Scullin's boss. He was the dean of a Hawaiian Pacific University. He said, well, you might want to meet this guy because he's a little bit crazy like you, a libertarian, and maybe you have something in common. So he arranged for us to meet. I had dinner with Ken and his wife, Lee. And it was the most delightful evening I'll never forget, because their daughter at the time was 4 or 5, maybe 6, I don't remember, quite young. And we were talking about the world and intelligent things. And Ken Lee, the daughter, would appear out of nowhere, dressed up maybe in a Hawaiian outfit, and do a dance. And then she would disappear, and then we would talk some more. And then she would appear and then do another dance in a different costume. So it was a delightful evening. And we didn't stay in touch. We went our separate way. But years later, I got involved with them, I think through what is now known as Liberty International, but also Ken's wife, Lee, organized summer camps in China. So I've been lucky and honored to be part of those summer camps. Again, interrupted by the pandemic policies. But we would go and teach Chinese students the principles of free markets. So this has been a wonderful friendship and relationship I've had with both the author Ken Scullin and his wife Lee.
In modern China is much ahead than it was in Soviet Union, because in modern China you can buy Adam Smith's book, for example. Hayek's book is possible to find in the bookshelves.
Maybe
it was not possible in Soviet Union at all.
Maybe they will be prohibited very soon.
Could be.
Yes, they may be returned to Soviet time, like.
Yeah, but China. I first went to China in 1987. The conditions, and I've been going to China almost every year since then. Until about 3 years ago, it struck me. I looked around and I saw all these young Chinese and also many international Westerners, for example, working there, going around, spending money, enjoying life, choosing how to live. When I first went to China, everyone lived in a work unit. You were born in a work unit, you were educated, you were fed, and you couldn't move. You had no choice of career. And I was thinking, China is finally becoming a normal country where people can live a life of their own.
If it continues to grow.
But now, with the new president, Xi Jinping, it's begun to, I think, deteriorate.
It's hard, maybe.
I was very optimistic about the condition of life for the Chinese people.
Unfortunately, not only China like this, Iran also was very optimistic.
Exactly. Afghanistan was more.
Afghanistan was. Turkey now, what is happening in Turkey, I'm very afraid.
But with China, this is something different, because there are, when I say China, I'm also always saying PRC, People's Republic of China, because there are some other Chinas which are very successful countries, like Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong,
Don't
Macau.
consider Singapore Chinese. It's a country with a dominant dominant majority, but it's not China. Don't call it China. So it's inappropriate. And even Taiwan's inappropriate, especially now.
There is not important ethnic population, which ethnic they. So Singaporeans mostly is Chinese people, but Singaporean life.
Yeah, it's not China.
Like Chinese people.
It's got nothing. I mean, I remember they very definitive back in the 1990s that they would resist China.
Yeah,
the imposition. So the suggestion that it's Chinese, it's just
that's strong,
politically distinct.
Still, the China itself, I mean, the People's Republic China can be lots of different types of inside even.
Yeah.
Because
yes, inside too.
In Georgia we say we have 10 or 11 different regions and we have lots of differences between them. Yep. We are one nation, but we are happy that we have lots of differences. But
3 languages, many dialects.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, but in China there could be millions of like this, you know. And what I think is that, of course, Singaporean Chinese can be different, or Taiwanese, or still, if we collect them under one name of Chinese, then.
But that's like saying Ukraine is Russian. I don't like that idea. But that's, I mean, if you want to play that, I think it's inappropriate. But
I mean, it's not China or not China. I mean, when the people are free, they are doing miracles that they could make People's Republic of China another crazy miracle.
They've done a good job already. I mean, they've done a very good job up till now.
Yes, yes, of course.
If Mao had not been dominant,
no comparison. Yeah.
China now would have been the most advanced country in the world without Mao.
What was observed here also 20 or 22 years ago, maybe 24 years ago, there were Chinese coming to open small shops in Tbilisi, and some people were nervous. Oh, those Chinese came here and they are swallowing us or like this. But now they disappeared. After 2010, they disappeared because it's better to live in China. Maybe they have more opportunities there. Maybe not now, but 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it was visible that they were growing faster than others, and that make them returning back maybe. And they don't see better opportunities here than there. So, but what is very important that they were given more freedoms. It was about freedoms, nothing else. You know, they started a huge improvement by themselves. But what I think is that can happen with any government, not only Chinese Communist Party, but any government. That as they had some success, they thought this was coming from the great leadership of Communist Party, not from the entrepreneurs on the floor.
Sure.
That's why they thought that if they were successful, if they were even intervening more in the economy, they could be more successful. Maybe they will change their mind. We hope that they will change, because it's not really.
They agitated. They found new way of Marxism.
Yeah, that's the new idea.
Importing capitalism successes to their system, like this. Actually, they did what they did. As I understand, I have been many times in China, maybe 5-6 times. As I understand, they have private sector. What they produce anything for export, they are totally free. Free. So they can do anything for if they export. So because of this, the segment of exports grows very fast.
Sure.
Of this. But political system is absolutely totalitarianism. Absolutely. Because all the people,
I'm surprised that you cannot speak about policy, about politics, about politicians, anything. So once I remember like this, she was translator. So she said, we love our government when I was asking something about it. So maybe they are too afraid, it's possible too, but I'm not sure. It looks like they really love their government, like Big Brother.
Well, I think
our father
with dictatorships, I mean, it's the same with Putin in Russia. You would be foolish to speak out against the great leaders. So we really don't know what people believe, or North Korea, or many countries where people seem to be supportive.
So another touches very important thing, I believe that this book is mostly about non-state, and very important thing is that it was not written in Soviet Union or PRC China, that it was written in the United States, and it was that time maybe not that strong non-state than it is now. So, and in Europe you can observe that non-state, that means for the public that state, the government is telling you that I'm here to help you, like Ronald Reagan was famously saying that if you have problems, I'm here to help you. And maybe it started from very small thing, but now state is so big and so powerful that it claims that it can substitute anything, and you can solve your problems through the government, like pandemic, for instance. That I think 90% of the population could be thinking that if not government, how could we fight the pandemic problems? And that's huge problem, as I believe. Although, of course, the same pandemic showed us lots of great examples why this is wrong. That everywhere, if you look now in any countries, media, press, TVs, they are reporting a lot maybe about the mistakes of the government during the pandemic, or how they were dealing with this, but also how they were restricting people, and if it was wrong, if it was right, if they don't continue discussing this in Germany or France or Britain or in the US or anywhere, so they will become another China. What's the difference? If you allow the government to be a non-state, and if you give them more power every day, then you can become like China without...
They never refuse. So if you give them power, they will take it always.
Well, in fact, everyone became China in the sense that the pandemic policies followed the playbook of the Chinese regime.
Some politicians in the West could be envy with the Communist Party leadership during the pandemic time. That Americans lost 1 million people during the pandemic, they say, at least, but the China lost much less, 1,000 times less.
We don't know.
So we should have the same kind of totalitarian government.
Who knows how much?
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that figure of a million Americans lost to COVID, in the beginning, PCR tests that were used to detect an infection with the SARS virus, which doesn't necessarily lead to COVID, which is the disease. They were over testing to the extent that even Anthony Fauci said if you run it through too many cycles over, I think, the number's somewhere between 27 and 35. I went to the MIT website, and the MIT hospital was announcing that they ran 40 cycles. You're detecting a fragment of a virus that may not be at all affecting your body, exaggerates the impact of what might have contributed to your death. So I think for the first probably 6 months of the pandemic, as it was announced, we don't have very accurate readings about who died why. And it may be that you died completely detached from anything to do with COVID. It was a prior infection with a SARS virus, but it may not have been a disease that COVID that killed you. So I dispute those numbers. The public health officials think they're understated. I'm absolutely convinced they're overstated because of PCR tests.
I am not sure that so many people, it's about 5 million as I remember, nearly, who died because of COVID. But
Globally,
yes, but I don't think all of them is from COVID.
No.
Because of COVID, yes, but not from COVID. Many of them, because of the regulations, and many of them because of the press, psychological press of them. So when every time, every day, every news begins and ends with the information that so much people is now
infected.
affected and died and so on. And every time. And the music also we did. It presses on the people and the situation goes worse and worse and worse.
You couldn't escape the data being thrown around.
So I'm not sure if I'd be with TV in this time, maybe I'd be in depression too. I don't know.
But they would have then said you died of COVID.
There was also an episode when they prescribed, they recommended, they obliged people to stay at home. And this would be for older people, this could be a very bad problem because of the psychology.
But also the fact that you're staying in a small environment, the contraction of the disease or the virus was found to be for example, in New York City. When people stayed at home all together, it allowed the virus to replicate and to spread within the family. Whereas if you weren't locked in, you would have been out, you would have been more ventilated. Ventilation was the primary problem for contracting the virus. That if you were in a closed space for a relatively long period of time with someone infected.
And they also pressed to stay in a closed place.
So it was...
but the lesson is, I think that from here, the greatest lesson is that the government is so inefficient that even theoretically has some chances to deal with the big problems, because the smaller units can be uneasy to fight these kind of big things. Then they can make so many mistakes that it will be much worse than the problem itself, like the same Ronald Reagan would say. But there is another thing which I believe very strongly, that they did not give the chance to the private sector to understand the problem and to create the answers, because they don't believe, they don't trust the private sector how it works.
I'm not even sure. You're right in a way. I think it was too centralized. It wasn't that the private sector was suppressed per se, but the private sector was given directions from the center. I mean, the private sector was involved with the vaccine development. That's supposedly a private sector initiative. But I think the bigger problem was that it was this centralization, this one single message, so that the pharmaceutical interventions, they would not allow physicians or the private sector to look for alternatives to the vaccine. You know, having other drugs used like hydrochloroquine or ivermectin, all these, I mean, we should have had an attempt to look for every existing drug to see what would happen if we applied it in a safe way. But this was absolutely forbidden for the most part. Wait for the vaccine, wait for the vaccine. So I think the problem wasn't the private sector being shut out, but it was just the centralization process that focused.
Centralization is not simply like the centralization inside of Georgia or the US or elsewhere, but it was global centralization thing that
the World Health Organization.
everybody
The
just
single message.
yeah, everybody waiting when
Yeah.
there would be solution coming
Yeah.
from somewhere,
Yeah.
big guy somewhere. That's a problem because if you went to your insurance company and saying that they say there is a vaccine, are you going to buy that? They will say no, it would be very expensive, but I'm going to pay. What's the problem? But they were all waiting until the big guys like United Nations organization or others would be understanding how much they would be buying, how much demand they would be creating for private producers. And those producers also wanted to know if they could have big demand for that. If small demand, why would they invest so much money in that? And this is what I'm saying, that not only in the in this production of the vaccines, but with the simple things like masks. You remember there was a kind of fight of the different countries who was getting masks earlier than others. It's so stupid to have such a thing in 21st century. Vaccines, okay, this is high tech and very uneasy business.
Masks are high tech too.
The masks are maybe of the 16th century or maybe 1500 years old. Thing that they could do this maybe that same efficiency many hundred years ago. So it was possible, but then when government says that I'm doing this, then everybody is thinking that if I want to try, then they will be selling this maybe cheaper, and they will be obliging all the healthcare institutions to buy their own, not ours. And they had no incentives to until when they found that the government was just impotent to produce the mask. When they understood that private sector was better, then there was plenty of masks everywhere immediately. Few weeks, few days maybe.
So I would like to add something, underline something. So Gia has said that government does not trust to the private sector. But I say a little bit more about it, because government does not want to trust it. Even to trust, it will refuse to trust because it decreases its power. So it does not want to trust to private sector, and it's very important.
Governments hate competition.
Yes.
The same, by the way, in the healthcare or educational things, that those politicians who are always promoting public schools, most of their children they go to the private schools. Because they know that private schools are better with the quality of education.
And the worst part is they have the income. They have higher income than most people, so they can afford to send their children to private schools, whereas many taxpayers can't.
Yes, and it's another very heavy questions, how in the private schools, how private they are actually. Because private is by, they have owners, certainly, private owners, but actually they teach in Georgia, they teach same as in public schools, and how is it private if they should teach same things?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
About the healthcare.
The only difference is that the incentives for school to get rid of bad teachers is stronger in the private sector.
Yes.
So there will be.
But sometimes it does not help.
But the curriculum is a problem.
So there was a joke during Soviet times about Soviet healthcare, that some congressmen came to Soviet Union visiting Tbilisi, and they were hosted by Central Committee of Communist Party, and they took them to different places which were slightly more beautiful than others, and they brought them to the best hospital, which was only for elites, like Communist Party, Central Committee members. And so they showed them, they're telling them that this is totally free. And those congressmen told them, this kind of low quality is free in the US as well. So this was a joke. It is showing very well the reality of the healthcare, by the way, because when you move towards public healthcare, then you are risking that it will be worse and worse quality because less people want to invest and etc. So, and with the private healthcare, then you can be sure that everything is done for competition and for making money, and they want to make possibly highest quality with the service. But on if you think that this is too expensive, then you move towards making quality worse and worse. With the same money sometimes you were paying for private services. And the insurance or other means are helping you to take some responsibility on your side, to decide which company you like more, etc. But with the public healthcare, you are out of any choice. Then there are only same quality everywhere, and there are always queues, and there are always waiting lists and etc. So, and there on the other side of the healthcare institutions, they can be private even, but as they know that money is coming anyhow, that there is no competition, government is giving you money for anything, then you don't think about satisfying the customers, but you are thinking how to satisfy the bureaucracy there. That's the outcome of this situation. So the non-state, if you look at the constitution of the US or many countries, you cannot find such thing that government is responsible for so many things. But they are taking more and more powers and functions, and people tend to believe that, okay, we don't care what is written in the constitution, we care that they are so powerful, they have money, and they can do something and deeper in the problem.
Well, this is where the book is, Ken's book is an inoculation against these kind of expansions of the state. And it has a good message in that regard to stop that sort of mission creep of government to become expanded.
Here is shown where from the problems come and why the people does not see it.
Yep.
Because if you have possibility to see the situation from outside, you can see it.
Sure.
But if you are inside, so it's hard to see why the problem goes to worse and worse situation. So it's very important, and in this book it's very easily, somehow very understandable given. So it's I would say it's a great book.
Yeah, it's a great book.
You should read.
Yeah.
Everyone should read it.
Absolutely.
And when you know where from the problems comes, you would better understand how you can find solution for it. And solution exists every time. So we speak in nearly 1 hour. So you can say last few
Buy the book, but more importantly, read the book.
Read, yes. So we are going to make new book in Georgian language. I try to make correction, and I would like to make it with some pictures inside. It would be more interesting, and so with some additional comments.
This edition doesn't have the cartoons.
Yes, it does not have, but I would like to make cartoons for next edition, and I hope I will reach this aim. We work on it.
Very interestingly, Ken is coming, the author is coming in August to Tbilisi, and if we find enough people, maybe we can have a side meeting with him about maybe his own ideas and also maybe what we can add to this book, because he is maybe permanently thinking of how to enrich this book with more ideas, more examples.
Good idea.
Yes, it should become more popular.
Sure, absolutely.
Because it does not mean any scientific searching or scientific to study much. You need only to read a tale. It's very easy.
Yeah, that's if you ask me the final thing, I'm always thinking that economics is much simpler thing than people think that.
True. And you find it in this book.
Maybe people think that the political leaders understand anything in economics. And they need to think that no, they don't. They truly don't understand anything.
Well, they might understand it, but it's inconvenient to live as though it matters. Let's put it that way. They're not all uneducated or stupid. It's just that the incentive structure of leadership in politics means that you ignore these things. And this is one of Thomas Sowell's quotes.
Yes, but on the other hand, I think that they are also brainwashed so much.
But again, the incentives make it inconvenient to follow economic principles.
So brainwash is very strange, very well working thing on the society. Sure. So that means only one thing: we should work more.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
მადლობა ლაშო.
თუ შეიძლება მოგწერეთ კითხვები, ჩვენ გიპასუხებთ რაც შეგვიძლია, ასევე ჩვენ სტუმარსაც შეგვიძლია დავუსვათ კითხვები, კონტაქტი გვაქვს, დავუსვათ კითხვებს და პასუხებს. მადლობა.
მადლობა.